Next up, we have Everest Pipkin here to tell us about the Fortunate Isles, fragment worlds, walled gardens, and the games that are played there. Everest is a game developer, writer, and artist from Central Texas who lives and works on a sheep farm in southern New Mexico. And I am very excited to hear what this is all about. Everest, welcome to the celebration.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Everest Pipkin. I'm a game designer, I'm an artist. I've been lucky enough to speak at Roguelike Celebration once before. I'm really excited to be back. I have somehow have an even more esoteric talk than last time, which I didn't even know was possible. I'm going to talk to you today about game worlds and some of the kind of variable bordered surfaces of play. And I'm going to borrow primarily from the language of the garden and garden architectures, particularly Western ornamental and devotional gardens, as well as idealized representations of those spaces. So we'll look at games as isolated worlds, fragments of worlds that sit inside of our own. We'll also consider the sort of bounding from outside that changes the logic of that inside, and we'll think about the kind of play that requires the circle. So over the course of this talk, I'll examine three kinds of surfaces. One, kind of the social edge or boundary of playing, like don't step on the cracks, the floor is lava, that's not fair, the magic circle, I think that's talked about a lot. Two, the bounded space of playing, so edges of game worlds, invisible walls, frames, the rim of the map. And then finally, the surface of play, the screen that hides that interior logic. Which is to say, I promise we'll loop back through to games, but bear with me as I talk about gardens for a while. About 6 months ago, I went through New York City with two goals only, to see some friends and family and to visit the Hunt of the Unicorn tapestries at the Met Cloisters. I went on this gray and clouded summer morning, drizzling really early, took the subway all the way up to the Bronx, almost an hour underground, and I was first through the museum doors in the morning. The Hunt of the Unicorn is not the only precious object at the Met Cloisters, although it is perhaps the most famous. I made good measure of the wooden figures and the altar cloths and the paintings and the miniatures, this museum of medieval devotions acquired through private collections and through theft and through the power of the institution. But when I turned the corner into the room that houses those tapestries, they took kind of all the color from the world and clarified it into themselves. The weld and matter and wode of dyed thread, woven, not embroidered, via the instructions drawn up in Paris and then produced later in Brussels. Worn, cut, patched, labored by so many centuries of movement and power and want. Lost, assembled, repaired poorly. The sheer size of them, these tapestries, the beauty, the cost of them, the cut sections, the severing. In the tapestries, the hunters enter the forest, the start of the hunt, the unicorn at the fountain, the unicorn attacked, the unicorn defending himself, the unicorn captured by the virgin, fragments of this only remain, the unicorn killed and brought to the castle, the unicorn in captivity. I'm here mostly because I am moved by the sheer and overwhelming violence of them. Violence steeped in beauty, in richness, in the lushest treasures of the world, but violence all the same, picked out in red thread, the gored dogs, the wounded creature, the wild thing that's draped across the flanks of domestic animals, its blood drunk, its head tilted up roughly by a man who holds it like a trophy. And I'm also here because of the cyclical nature of the set. No real beginning, no real end. Hung in the round in a room with multiple entrances, the unicorn is now living, wild, surrounded by the forest, now dead, bleeding, spitted upon the spears. And now resurrected, but caged, held not by the fence that encircles it, impossible to hold a creature such as this with a tiny wooden fence, but by the collar, by the agreement, by the captivity itself, a social holding. The floor is lava, and floating, of course, in a sea of flowers. In the center of this room, of the tapestries, are a book of flower studies, also medieval, florals picked out in kind of impossible detail on these yellowing papers. It was, on the day I was there, open to a study of irises. These flowers are the the stylistic touchstones of this era in place. Mille Fleurs, the Thousand Flowers background style of kind of isolated botanical elements arranged in this perpetually blooming artificial spring. Artificial because we see them in this compressed year, seasons drawn into one impossible late spring day where every flower that blooms from winter to fall is instead in its blooming now. This too casts the unreal cycle of the unicorn adrift in time. Where he walks, time doesn't pass. It is a violent, lovely eternity. This hunt, this set of tapestries, is set in a horus conclusus, which is just a Latin term for enclosed garden. It was a really important touchstone in medieval and Renaissance poetry. The horus conclusus was a metaphor, but it was also a built thing. All gardens are enclosed somewhat, even as much by demarcation of space, you know. Don't step on the cracks, as with like literal stone walls around them. In fact, the modern words like garden and yard are dissonants of the Old English yard, which denotes a fence or enclosure, while the very word paradise enters English via a long train of lingual adoptions, including French and Latin and Greek and Old Iranian and Old Persian, from the Avestan Pyridesa, the literal meaning of which is walled enclosure, from pyri, which is a cognate of English peri, around, and dis, to make, form a wall, or build. So the walled gardens of European medieval life are particularly pointed, both keeping animals and the public out and forming symbolic patterns of self-reflection, of meditation, of resonance with not just the garden, but the garden, right? The biblical garden. Perhaps the most clear example of which is in the cloister gardens of Benedictine monasteries, which were often kind of adopted reconfigurations of ruined Roman villas. And in these spaces, like the four-crossed path and the foundation in the fountain of life, were these symbols that were meant to resonate the garden with the religious and dedicate life, as well as being sites of functionality with their many used plants and flowers. The Met cloisters, where the artificial spring of the Hunt of the Unicorn tapestries lives in perpetual bloom, boasts one of these gardens, or more than one to be more accurate, as the cloisters were constructed piecemeal, built from 5 separate abbeys from Catalonia and France, all purchased for the private collection of an American painter who had made his living buying and selling artifacts, icons, and eventually the very buildings of another age. These were shipped in pieces and reconstructed stone by stone. The cloisters sit in their transported walls on top of a hill in very upper Manhattan, almost the Bronx. Even the hill is sculpted in classical New York City Park fashion. Boulders are moved, dirt is mounded, mountain is made, which the castle can be viewed. Inside, the stairs are worn by centuries of movements by Benedictine nuns. The stone has been pressed away by devotions, but the logic of that transit has been lost. The place has been jumbled, deconstructed. In one spot, a stair step has been installed backwards. What is it about the monastery, that world apart, the vision of the bounding and what is beyond, that makes its construction so beckoning to commit the violence of relocation? What is it about the garden wall that has it deconstructed and packed into marked stones and shipped across an ocean, just so it could be reformed into a new encircling, a stylistic pastiche, the one that's no less functional for it? Is it simply this want to cut a world from the world? Only last week, I walked with a friend in the Chapel of the Chimes, a crematorium in Oakland, discussing its resonance with game dungeons. We both have a healthy practice of full-scale architectural theft where appropriate. He reminded me that Julia Morgan, later architect of the famous Hearst Castle, designed the Chapel of the Chimes, its many compounding rooms. They're called gardens, these resting places with sliding roofs and glass-paneled niches. Garden of Solitude, Garden of Tranquility, Garden of Beatitudes. All of them under a constant threat of landscaping. Since the last time I'd visited, which was only a few years ago, I did not recognize a single indoor tree. This architect, Julia Morgan, made her name in reinforced concrete, which is kind of a rare architectural material in the early 20th century. It was used for bridges, maybe, but like not buildings. She was tapped to design a bell tower for Mills College in the revisionist Spanish colonial style, as California at the turn of the century and still now was wont to do. And she was skyrocketed into, if not fame, then at least notoriety, when it remained standing unbothered amongst the ruined college buildings after the 1906 earthquake. 2 decades later, she would begin construction on the Hearst Castle, which is the infamous mansion of publishing tycoon William Randolph Hearst, a project that would, despite taking up some decades of her life, never see completion. The Hearst Castle was built in a Spanish colonial revival style, or some vision of it, again, hodgepodge. In 1919, Hearst wrote, "The San Diego Exposition is the best source of Spanish in California. The alternative is to build in the Renaissance style of southern Spain. We picked out the towers of the church at Ronda, a Renaissance decoration, particularly that of a very southern part of Spain, could harmonize very well with them." And again, borrowed this whole construction, borrowed piecemeal from whatever kind of piece of history he was interested in at the moment, as much a hodgepodge as the cloisters is practically. Under construction for almost 30 years and never finished, Hearst Castle's final count comes in at about 42 bedrooms, 61 bathrooms, 19 sitting rooms, 127 acres of gardens, and a private zoo. All walled, of course, a pleasure palace satirized in Citizen Kane's Xanadu. A built utopia, for one. In it hangs the stag hunt tapestry, which is a hunting scene woven in Flanders in the 15th century in the same millefleur style. Over the pool tables, all those 1,000 flowers. Julia Morgan was not remotely an outsider architect. The Hearst Castle was funded to the tune of some $10 million, and that's in 1920s money. But she was a bit esoteric. Reinforced concrete, hodgepodge architectural revisionism, and castles and all. There's play in her buildings, a clobbering together and full-scale theft of styles that has resonance with later experiments in outsider architecture, which again was very engaged in thievery. Structures and community spaces of, like these structures and community spaces of kind of the urban experimental laboratory Arcasanti, or Port Marion, the seaside tourist village in Wales that was used so famously for the filming of 1966 The Prisoner, or these car roof domes of Colorado's Drop City, the somewhat terrifying platforms of the Principality of Sealand, or even the proposed floating sphere cities of Buckminster Fuller and Shoji Saudo's Cloud 9. These types of architectures range from libertarian power fantasies to socialist urban design, but they're all versions of utopias, even if they're utopias for a very small group of people. Each of them are their own kind of bordered world, one with both the literal boundings of sea or sky or desert, but also with the social bounding of like, we're up to something here. This is an idea, not just a building. This is a version of what the world could be. Mythological utopias are often islands, whether the medieval Russian Buyan, the English Avalon, the Polynesian Hawaii, or the Greek Fortunate Isles, from which this talk takes its name, which were legendary islands in the Atlantic Ocean, variously treated as actual geographical places, and also as a site of Elysium, a winterless earthly paradise inhabited by the heroes of Greek mythology. And it's here, perhaps, that we see subject matter finally resonate with game worlds and their fictive edges. So, the number of games that take floating city or island world as their setting is beyond listing. There are many, many reasons for this, of course, and it goes beyond the medium of games. The setting itself is compelling in fiction. It touches all of the kind of historical references this talk has waded through, and 10,000 more besides. They are often ideologically dense spaces, again, bordered in a way that lets the rules of interiority be different there. However, the bordered space is also one of control, and I mean this both ways. It's a controllable space within fiction, which is a real blessing to a game designer, which is a real blessing to like narrative structures, to story, but it's also a controllable space, which is a kindness to a game designer who's dealing with the question of like, where exactly does game space end? After all, what is a more natural edge than an island, the hull of a ship, or a 1,000-foot drop? Why not build the edge of the world so one can then build a garden inside? This is absolutely shot through all of my own work, both as subject and as restraint. For instance, in last year's the Barnacle Goose experiment, you play as a researcher studying abiogenesis, the creation of new and living things out of raw and non-living matter. And in order to undertake this work without experimental contamination, you're locked inside of this hermetically sealed dome, entirely empty. And as such, the only raw material for experimentation is that of your own body. It's this clicking, ticking, thriving thing that kind of spirals out of itself, that grows out of your body, and becomes more than you within the locked dome. So bordered, despite being a 2D game that's played in the browser. It becomes the self that makes the world. It's even fundamental to one of the breakout genres of the last 10 years, the battle royale, dropped onto an island with edges that close in on you, forcing you into ever more constrained spaces as the magic circle of social understanding meets and is pushed by the literal wall of death. And these spaces, too, are garden-like. In a post titled Fortnite Pastoral from 2019, Robin Sloan describes the aftermath of the infamous two-day black screen wormhole world reboot, wherein the island map was replaced by a new version of itself. He says, after loading into the new pastoral fantasy world, the new island's geography is softer, more natural. Mountains flow into moraine, hills flatten into meadows, draws empty into creeks. The new environment is plainly pastoral. There's more open space. The farms have become more detailed, with apple orchards and rows of trellised tomatoes. Butterflies dance in the meadows. After the wormhole opened, Fortnite made much of its players' first drop into an unknown island, and it was right to do so because the experience was breathtaking. From the first wash of pixels, it was obvious. This new place was simpler, softer, wide open, unburdened. It's a fantasy, and a good one. Despite the propensity of imagination for floating islands and artificial structures, they are not a common type of architecture outside the realm of fantasy. Still, some have been built, and far more have won design contests. Proposed uses include living spaces and farms and hotels, but of course, the vast majority of these sites in reality are offshore oil wells or military installations, an advantage over more foundational installations being that they, like the clock tower, are immune to seismic shock. But even for the sake of argument, I'm not going to call an oil platform a garden. I simply will not go that far, but it is walled. It is a constructed space, a world that is bordered with different physical rules than the place around it. And in the sake of military installation, as well as in corporate space, this is also true in legal statute and the required behavior of those that inhabit these spaces outside of space. Which is, of course, to say that borders are violent. They are disruptions to the world, even when essentially harmless. No, you're out, I tagged you, that's against the rules. They are still a disruption, but they are most often not harmless. The border of a nation is held up by threat of violence, does violence. The wall of death of the battle royale is not so haha funny in this lens, that it perhaps contains a bit of wry, skewering, miserable humor employed by those living under the rules of a state that can wield violence in this way. For instance, the aesthetic of the garden is weaponized contemporarily in Israeli tree planting projects which cover raised Palestinian villages in young pines, obfuscating the lines and walls of houses that until very recently kept families warm. The wall of the garden is a cutting out, a defining of constructed inside that requires a maintenance that includes ecological disruption and killing. It is a constant war, even in my own garden, with the slugs, the aphids, the rabbits. It's a place of imported plants and approved types of growing, weeding, pruning, harvest in the prime, and a place where power flexes, where colonial powers collect and show their treasures, under the guise of simple growing. Agnes Dene knows this. She titles her 1982 performance in the Battery Park landfill of downtown Manhattan, wherein she grows a 2-acre field of wheat field, a confrontation. So, the world is walled out. The garden's contents are confined, isolated, domesticated, and used. The garden is called beautiful. The garden is put on postage stamps. The garden becomes the excuse to supplant people. The garden is political. Hedosterol attempts to take on the subject in her 2019 Power Plants at the Serpentine Sackler Galleries, so named for the family that runs Purdue Pharma, if not singularly responsible for the opioid epidemic, at least profiting handsomely from it. In Power Plants, Sterol generates visions of flowers growing in a ruderal garden, an ensemble of medicinal plants that grow out of waste ground, perhaps in the wake of human disruption or destruction. The show falls flat. The videos are uninteresting and uncritical. In interviews, Sterol says that she was meant to be showing a completely different work about a friend who fought to grow a garden in jail. She says, female prisoners used any means they could to access flower seeds. The guards would always try to destroy the seeds and take them away. It was this constant struggle. And that, due to some red tape, Power Plants was instead a last-minute substitution for the Sackler Gallery. The truly wonderful games critic M. Reed comes to the same conclusion about the show, which is general apathy, but writes this about the rural garden. Every wall is a prefiguration of its falling. Every seemingly inescapable order already contains its own collapse, and the rooterol is what grows in the cracks of these calculations, spreading roots, forcing them apart to pieces. Rooterol anarchy is perhaps inevitable in the long term, and that can be an exciting way of reshaping political imagination and demands. But there are also ways to help it grow. Gardening, perhaps? In the realm of the political border, well, may we live to see an end to them, rural gardening and daily action. But as for the game border, the edge of the island, the invisible wall, rural gardening, the breaking out or into, is well represented in out-of-bounds areas, in no-clip modes, in wall hacks, in pushing the limit of the edge. This is an over-generous application of what rural gardening might mean to society more generally, but the power of this to the right person at the right time should not be written off. I remember, for instance, all the best parties I've attended in online spaces as a teenager, always secret and precious things held in out-of-bounds areas, passed by word of mouth from person to person. Here is how you can get here. Welcome. Clipped through the floor in World of Warcraft with the inside-out meshes forming an impossible architecture overhead, cathedral-like, all the normal maps inverted, transparent, baroque, nesting. The thrill of inserting your body into a middle space and breaking through onto a plane that was suddenly yours, a home, built temporarily out of a world that didn't quite hold me. Here, the rules changed, sometimes due to errors in code, but often due to the social situation that was set on top of them. Magic Circle re-engaged as the invisible wall is passed. Guild Alliance thrown to the wayside. There will not be fighting here. Someone is playing music over their mic from a boombox in their bedroom. That echo is terrible, but we're going to dance. I recently watched The Grannies, the 2019 documentary by Marie Folston, Nick Murray, Luke Neher, and Sam Gill, featuring the out-of-bounds exploits of Marigold Bartlett, Andrew Brophy, Ian McClarty, Kalonika Quigley, and friends as they navigate through the far spaces of Red Dead Redemption Online. The material beauty of the place where it begins to break is minimalist and serene, textures and geometry rising and clashing, almost sculptural, formal. Yet in this quiet, the physical violence of getting over the invisible wall is notable, a pushing and twisting of the ragdoll body, or a quicker version, lassoed and dragged across the ground by a friend, catching and pulling on geometry that you can't see until you're through. I'm reminded, as I so often am, of the Minecraft player dedicated to walking to the end of the generated world in Farlands or Bust, a Let's Play that has been running since 2011. The Farlands of Minecraft are places where even the endless generative rules of a proc-gen world begin to falter, glitch, and fail. It is a durational performance, 58% of the way to the end of Minecraft after 12 years of walking. The place that these kinds of tricks and techniques for breakage are most readily exhibited, indeed, the place where they're gardened, is in the speedrunning community, of course, clipping through walls and launching over physical geometry, allowing shortcutting of stage and levels. Speedrunners engage with the architecture of game levels, not so much as a series of platforms or walls, but rather as pockets of inside-outside, constantly capable of inverting, of applying rules from the one to the other, of shortcuts and impossibilities turned into these memorized routes. But there is another kind of manipulation in speedrunning as well, manipulation of the game data itself, less physical dancing through game space, and more material rearrangement. This is very apparent in TAS, tool-assisted runs, wherein a programmed input device replaces the human player on the controller, allowing button presses with precision and dexterity beyond human time. But this can be seen in all kinds of play, including casual play. Whether the use of glitches and cheats like the infamous item overflow glitches of early Pokemon, or the wealth of mods in Skyrim, or game sharks and real-time corruptors, pieces of software that edit and break a game intentionally to and for a new kind of play. Which finally brings us to our third boundary, the surface. So if the magic circle defines the social elements of play, or perhaps returning to our original metaphor, to the room the tapestries are in, and the invisible wall borders a game world, or what is outside and inside the composition of the weaving, the borders of the frame, the border of the surface is where logic is obfuscated by appearance. And this is very obvious in the case of a video game, where code derives the visual, where code drives the visual user interface, but is just as present in conversational games, in schoolyard games, or in other types of play. In our metaphor of the tapestry, the boundary of the surface is the how they were made, the labor and the wealth of them, the threads threshed, spun, dyed, the designs, the weaving, all of this detail of construction that clarifies into an image when you stand back in the room. And it is also in the tapestry's relationship to time, an outside time, the thousand flowers in their perpetual spring. I wrote about this specifically in Soft Corruptor, a 2020 unfolding game poem about atomic structures and view source and ghosts. It considers out of bounds areas, but it also considers this other border, the surface of the game world, a kind of skinned materiality that is not exactly playable, but is playful nonetheless. This kind of play of material is also like the eternal spring of the flowers, because to view underneath the surface of a thing is to see it outside of time, not running, but all potential folded inside of it. This is why I work so often inside of the browser. It wears its own surface. It's only ever skin deep. You can view source, you can touch it. It is formal and it is functional and it is tangibly there. How, made visible, the logic, the wall, the rule of the bounding surface itself becomes transparent, readable, and permissible. And in that way, it is also what it is to pass your head through the firmament and to see all the thousand flowers blooming there. That's it for me. I think I'll hand off. I think I hit time exactly, so I'll see you in the breakout room, and thank you.
Thank you so much. It's masterfully done.